welcome back and on into the new year and a brand new episode of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, my colleague, my mentor, and the purveyor of the must-read Too Deep Zone on Substack, Mike Tanier. Mike, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. We took like an unscheduled week off last week. We are not Dan Campbell. We do not work when we do not have to necessarily, like he did against the 49ers. And that's why he's got a first round bye this week, and we're here.
Yes, and that's why he doesn't have to worry about hopping on the coaching carousel. That's why he gets to take a mini vacation before the NFL playoffs begin. And of course, we're going to get into both of those things as wildcard weekend looms larger by the minute, by the hour, and by the day. But before we do a little bit of housekeeping for you, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Leave us those 5-star reviews if you like the show. Let us know what you like. If you don't like us and you think we're a little nuts, you can rip us in the 5-star review. Just please leave that 5-star review.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. We will read whatever you say if it's a 5-star review.
Yes, we'll read the 5-star review on the podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975, and be sure to subscribe to the Too Deep Zone on Substack. I know Mike has some outstanding playoff and certainly NFL draft content coming down the pike. And subscribe to Between the Hash Marks on Substack as well. You can catch the All Breakout team that just went live today with my All Breakout team, Mike Tanier's selections, and the picks of de facto editor Joe Stazak. We all put together our All Breakout players from this past season, and that was a fun project to work on as well.
That was a fun project. Was there anything that I said or Joe said that surprised you?
No, I was surprised a little bit that neither of us picked up on the breakout wide receiver in Jackson Smith. Yeah.
We should have.
Right. That was an omission.
As I apologize to somebody on the on Blue Sky who said, well, people forget that the national media forgets the Seahawks. And I replied, yes, but the Seahawks are forgettable. And he agreed. So we reached a détente on that opinion. But Jackson Smith and Jigba should have been on the list. Absolutely.
Should have been. And of course, follow Mike on Blue Sky. Follow me on Blue Sky as well, at Matt Lombardo and at Mike Tanier. Mike, what do you say we jump into the coaching carousel conversation with arguably the most dumbfounding decision that I've ever seen an NFL owner make? John Mara's choice, and it certainly was a choice, to bring back both general manager Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll for yet another year. This is a rudderless franchise. It has been, and it feels like John Mara can't get out of his own way.
Well, he's the guy with the rudder. He's the lack of rudder. He's a walking, talking lack of rudder. But I love it. He issues the statement, I'm keeping these two. And then he says, I'm almost out of patience. Like, this is the ineffectual dad whose kids have wrecked the house and the car like 25 times. He turns to them, I'm almost out of patience. This is the teacher whose kids are about to like set fire to the classroom. And he takes them aside and says, I'm almost out of patience. You don't wait until you're out of patience. You be proactive and you make these decisions. And so I guess he runs out of patience in October next year and he fires Daboll. Is that how this is going to work?
I guess, but you look at Joe Schoen and the reasoning he should be fired. Everybody talks about letting Saquon Barkley walk, and we've debated that until we've both been blue in the face. He's a running back playing for a franchise in New York previously that had no business paying a running back the kind of money that Saquon commanded. So I understand that. Right. But you can't also then watch and wave bye-bye to Xavier McKinney and let a homegrown all-pro caliber player walk out of the building to the Green Bay Packers, where he has the kind of year where he plays his way into the defensive player of the year conversation, has become a franchise cornerstone for the Green Bay Packers. You can't go another offseason only getting a couple of pieces and making progress on your decade-and-a-half-long project of rebuilding the offensive line. You can't retain a head coach in Brian Daboll, who not only do I get the sense that the players weren't exactly running through brick walls for by season's end, but I think I can count on about 1.5 fingers how many games they were actually in and competitive in since Halloween. And to look at what that franchise has become, and I get the fact that they win a Super Bowl once every decade or two, but you haven't been to the postseason more than once in a decade. And the only thing that I can come to, the only conclusion I can draw, Mike, is John Mara might be thinking that he does not want to hire a 4th general manager and a 5th head coach since 2017. That's the only reason you bring either one of these guys back, let alone both.
That's it. He's tired of going out there and doing this again and having to do it again. But look at what it's almost an affront at this point because you mentioned, McKinney. Leo Williams
Yeah.
had a career season for the Seahawks. And here's a guy, now we get it. Like, oh, we inherited Dave Gettleman's crazy contract, so we're in a cap situation. We got to let Leo Williams go because we know even though we know he's a good player because he makes too much. Okay. A couple of years later, you're saying things like, well, Xavier McKinney, we know he's a great player, but we have to let him go because we have bad contracts everywhere. It's been 3 years. Those are your contracts. Waller, the tight end, was your contract. Okay. We can say Daniel Jones was Mara's contract or something like that. But
I'm glad we finally got to Daniel Jones because not only was it a miscalculation not to pick up the fifth-year option, just to give yourself the chance to evaluate whether or not the playoff year was a mirage or not, but you locked yourself into a $46 million per year deal that Joe Schoen negotiated and John Mara signed. To me, we could talk about all the other talent that you let out of the building. You completely bungled and mismanaged your quarterback situation. And Malik Neighbors is a revelation. And you and I have both talked about, just imagine if Malik Neighbors was on another team with a competent quarterback, we'd be talking about him as offensive rookie of the year. We'd be talking about him as the catalyst probably for a potential playoff team. But you still could have drafted a quarterback. You still could have drafted Bo Nix. You still could have drafted Michael Penix Jr. But they decided that they were going to bring back Daniel Jones. And then they decided in November, hey, this isn't working for us. We're going to bench him. We're going to embarrass him by putting him on the practice squad and the scout team while the media is watching practice for all of 7 minutes. And then we're going to grant him his release.
Right. And that's it. That's what some of the inside baseball people don't say. They made sure the beats saw that. It's very easy for the beats not see something and to be quiet. You have to public. You're putting it on Jump Street. And that's it. Like, it's Mara and Sheen who make the mistake with Daniel Jones that he's out there opening day. Daniel Jones going for opening day there to embarrassment, to bench, to cut, to off the team. That's stable. Yeah. That's stable to a degree. And that's somebody who said, hey, we worked together 2 years. You took me to the playoffs a couple of years ago. Now I have to F you for whatever reason. And that is weird. And you go back and, okay, Jones, is a below average quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. You look at this NFL right now, you take a below average quarterback who can run a little bit and has some experience in Jones, and you add Malik Neighbors, and you put a front four of Thibodeau and Burns and Lawrence on there. That should be about 7 or 8 wins in the NFL, no matter how crappy everything else is. And it was nowhere. That's where you go back to what you said. Halloween and we quit. Not week 16, 17, we quit. Halloween and we quit. That's stable.
That's totally Brian Daboll. And look, I don't want to be the one put in a position to defend Dave Gettleman here, okay? But Andrew Thomas,
yes,
All-Pro on his record at left tackle. Dexter Lawrence, All-Pro at defensive tackle. Xavier McKinney could potentially be an All-Pro. Saquon Barkley is what he is. We can debate the pick till it's blue in the face. I'm not going to say they should have kept Dave Gettleman, but from a talent acquisition standpoint, how has Joe Schoen been any better?
Leo Williams, too. I always said Dave Gettleman's like me when I walk into a fancy liquor store. And I see the top shelf, Pappy Van Winkle 25-year-old bourbon. And I'm going to walk out of there with really good bourbon. Do not ask how much it cost. Do not ask if I pawned everything, my laptop to get this bourbon. I'm going to get it. It's going to taste good. His thing is, my kids might not be able to go to school after I'm done. And that was Gettleman. He always picked a good guy. Yeah. Most of the time he picked Jones. He mostly picked good guys, but here's the problem. Here's how much he paid in picks.
I'm going to spit in the face of draft value is what with the strategy.
Right. And then of contract value, et cetera, et cetera. So, but he was good at least making the big swing and identifying the guys. You bring in Joe Schoen, you get Evan Neal. Poor Evan Neal. He's such a mic drop.
He's a punchline, unfortunately.
He's such a mic drop.
But listen, you look around the league and, the Monday night opener between the Steelers and the Giants. You and I have touched on this before. John Mara talking about how he loves and emulates and wants to embody the consistency of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, they could have gone and they could have brought in an executive from the Pittsburgh Steelers to become the general manager this year. They could have gone and got the director of player personnel. They could have gone and gotten the assistant general manager, turned over the keys, and this would have been your opportunity. You look at some of the head coaching candidates we're going to get into in a couple moments. Any of them would be a potential upgrade over Brian Daboll, would be a fresh voice and a new direction. But instead, the Giants seem intent on, as I wrote in the column on Monday morning, compounding bad decisions with more bad decisions.
Right. And you talked about, I talked about it. People on the internet have pointed it out. What happens now is that these lame ducks pick the quarterback. The quarterback comes in, probably a rookie, probably, whatever they pick, and spends a year with the lame duck coaching before those guys trip over themselves, get fired. And then this guy is kind of in the Caleb Williams situation. Oh, it was a rough year. It was chaos all around me. My coach was fired in November, whatever. Now I have to learn a new system in my second year. And we've seen failure after failure after failure when teams try to use that model.
He's Drake May. He's going to be Drake May because they're going to have a shoddy offensive line.
Yep.
They're going to have a head coach who knows that he's coaching for his job. So you're going to make shoddy decisions in terms of if and when you play him, the kind of aggressive play calls you're going to ask him to make. It's just not a great situation. And unfortunately for residents of the fine state of New York, it's not a great situation for the other franchise in East Rutherford, New Jersey either.
No, who's sadder? The Giants or the Jets? It's got to be the Jets, I guess, but the Giants.
I'm interviewing for the job on Thursday, actually. They called me. I negotiated a 2 p.m. interview window so I could be done in time for Penn State Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinal. But I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring. I'd make my case. I'd bring a playbook with a couple of innovative play designs scratched out. And, maybe I can present a better offense than Arthur Smith.
I pulled a Ben Johnson and told him I wasn't interested. I just big timed them. You're getting big timed. The Jets are getting big timed by coordinators. Now, granted, Johnson did that last year to Washington. It's Washington. Remember where Washington was last year. That's where you're at right now.
Yeah, not great. And the interview list, I'm just going to sit here and just scratch my head for 5 minutes while I read this off. Interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich, you got to have the token conversation. Joe Brady, Brian Flores, Vance Joseph, Mike Vrabel, Bobby Slowick, who became the whipping boy in your column today. I saw that. Matt Nagy, Rex Ryan. Somebody explained that this has to be a gag. The Rex Ryan conversation has to be a gag. Arthur Smith, Brian Griese, Josh McCown, Ron Rivera, and Aaron Glenn. That's who's interviewing for the Jets job.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Yeah, when you mention those, and like we know Rex Ryan, they know Rex Ryan, and like he's a TV guy. A lot of us look at Louis Riddick, and we respect him. He liked him. He does less clowny, does less buffoonery than Rex Ryan. And I get Rex Ryan, like me, does buffoonery on purpose. But okay, we respect Riddick. He's a TV guy. He's been a TV guy since I think 2011, 2012. You're broadcasting, hey, there's an old man and his sons sitting around watching ESPN calling people for interviews. That's what you're broadcasting when you bring those guys in. You throw Rivera into that list at that point. No matter what you do afterwards, you're already sort of telegraphing an unserious approach to this.
And listen, I can make an argument for maybe a handful of the coaches on this list. Aaron Glenn, especially after the coaching job that he did Sunday night, completely stifling and forcing Sam Darnold to see ghosts again for the first time all year. I can make an argument for someone like Brian Flores, who is just a wizard of blitzing and just a maniacal defensive coordinator that maybe you can revert back to being a defense first type of operation. I can talk about Joe Brady because he's the Buffalo Bills, and you look at the play calling that he's been able to do and help Josh Allen cut down on the turnovers and all those things. Mm-hmm. Some of the names on this list, Mike, I mean, listen, I have to think my brain will not let me comprehend Rex Ryan being anything but a joke, and this being a bit on ESPN, that the Jets would even consider making that phone call.
And that Ryan then goes on TV and every place else and talks about, well, I'd change the atmosphere and things like that. It's like a content creation model for him. At least
20 years ago. It was like 25 years ago that he was there.
Right. But at least you come out of this and say, hey, Rex, we did the interview. Maybe this was a courtesy to you, or maybe it's fact finding, or maybe we're really interested. You don't go, Rex, don't go on ESPN and strut around like I just got an interview and here's what I said, here's what I told them. That's unserious. We are trying to look serious here in the Jets. We're trying to show you that there's not a 17-year-old running this team right now. And when you do that, it looks like a 17-year-old is running this team right now.
Which very well might be.
I think
reporting from Diana Rossini, the best in the business, that some decisions were made based on Madden ratings of
yes,
the fight.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then we have Brick Johnson running around and things like that. And if it's not them, it's Woody, and Woody's, an old weird fail grandson in his own right. You mentioned some of those coaches. I like Flores. I'm not bringing a rookie quarterback in with Flores, who tried to rip. Well, that's a bad example for Tua. But like, if I'm bringing Flores, I want to bring like Doug Peterson with him, so there's someone nice for the quarterback. Like that's one. Joe Brady, I get it, but Joe Brady's is a puckerfish who's slurped onto Joe Burrow in college and has slurped onto Josh Allen. Show me what you're doing with like an ordinary quarterback or an unestablished quarterback, and it's different. But obviously, there's good choices on that list. I think Vance Joseph getting a second chance isn't a idea long
overdue.
But I don't know what the structure is. Like you name the GMs, and I don't know one of these GMs from another. The most part, who's the boss? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it Woody? Is it Brick? Or are you going to bring somebody and say, "Hey, Mike, bada bing, bada boom from the Chiefs"? I forget the gentleman's name. Bagenzi. Yeah. You are going to get the key to the operation. You're going to get what they gave Joe Sheen more or less in New York, and you're going to get 3 or 4 years of non-interference. Are the Jets going to do that? What are they signaling to these guys? Right now, they're just signaling it's pandemonium as usual.
For sure. And, you could go a bunch of different directions, but if it were me, if I were Woody Johnson, and God forbid, I would don't want to wish that on myself at all. The hire would be Mike Vrabel. And I'm not typically a retread coach guy, but you actually think about, as I outlined, I think Joe Brady is the right choice because of his ability to get more out of Josh Allen, even than we've seen, and certainly a more efficient version of him. But there's a unique situation here, and you just outlined all the reasons why. They need more than anything else an adult in the room.
Yeah.
If you're bringing back Aaron Rodgers, you especially need someone who can handle that ego and can put him in his place when he becomes the distraction that he's inevitably going to be. You hire some sort of head coach of the offense and let them be the play caller and handle all those meetings. But the problem is that, you can't hand Mike Vrabel total control. I talked to an executive who worked with him in Tennessee and said, you need to hire the GM first, because if you give Mike Vrabel personnel control, you're going to be making the equivalent of the A.J. Brown trade again. You're going to trade Sauce Gardner to the Kansas City Chiefs or something equally ridiculous.
Like angry over money type of thing, or just like...
give him all the personnel power to make the decisions and make the signings and those sort of things.
Right.
And I just think that when you look at it, they need somebody with experience. I'm typically the guy who says, bring me your best and brightest up-and-coming coordinator. Give me your guy who has carved his own niche with a mediocre quarterback. Give me your guy who's become the stud defensive coordinator like an Aaron Glenn. But this situation doesn't call for it in New York, not with those Jets.
Here's your problem with Vrabel. The Patriots.
Yeah.
The Patriots are your problem with Vrabel. And Vrabel is probably hanging around the Belichick suite with Robert Kraft bringing him, tea and cookies or whatever Vrabel's into at 12:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Nobody's getting Vrabel if the New England Patriots are getting Vrabel, and the New England Patriots are getting Vrabel. So,
who's your hire? Who's your guy
for the Jets?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. I feel like the first maneuver honestly should be, we're cutting Aaron Rodgers. Clean slate. That should actually be the first move. I, Woody Johnson, hereby decree that he's gone, and you're coming in, and you don't have to deal with him. But there's also a $50 million cap hit. I don't know the exact number, etc. And then I do probably bring in the general manager and then the head coach. Then I do feel comfortable with the young up-and-comer coming through here. Because, I worry about some of these guys. Flores with the New York media. Vance Joseph, I don't know, one and done earlier on in his career. He's going to come into New York. Some of these guys will get eaten alive. If it's a younger guy, I want somebody up top to say, this is going to feel more like the Giants. It's going to be more buttoned down as an operation.
And is Matt Nagy the best of Doug Peterson and John Harbaugh, or is he Eric Bieniemy? You just don't know.
We saw him for 4 years in in Chicago.
Chicago, yeah, average.
Yeah, Trubisky kind of went sideways, although that's Trubisky. Then Justin Fields goes sideways, and he kind of gives up on him. And there's no there.
No, no, and I'm certainly not going back to Arthur Smith as a head coach after what we all saw in in
What we're
Atlanta
seeing, what we're seeing,
and what we're seeing in Pittsburgh right now.
right,
Yes.
right.
But you know what's comical about all this is that no matter what the Giants decided to do and whatever the Jets wind up doing, chances are they're going to be more competent than Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys with Mike McCarthy's future hanging in the balance.
What's going on there? Have you seen
anything? I have a theory. Okay. I have a theory, and I wrote about it in Monday morning's column. Okay. I just get the sense that Jerry Jones does not like firing head coaches. And I get the feeling that he's so stuck in the past that he can't look and read the room that Josh Jacobs, a marquee veteran running back, transformed the Packers offense, that Saquon Barkley elevated the Philadelphia Eagles into legitimate Super Bowl contenders, that he instead decided that running backs don't matter, and he decided to bring back the ghost of Ezekiel Elliott's past production, right? Mm-hmm. And I just get the sense that he's going to think that, the players played hard for Mike McCarthy over the last month of the season. They seem to like him. I don't like firing head coaches. So therefore, the easiest decision for me is to hand a blank check to Mike McCarthy and say, what's it going to take? And hire him for the next 3 to 4 years and lock it in. And he might never have to hire a coach again in his life.
It is tricky here, because if we go with the Jerry is just lazy and tired, which I agree with, is it more tiring to just go get another coach or renegotiate the contract? Which is more work for Jerry? Because whichever is less work is the one he's going to do. And I saw McCarthy had some interviews. So maybe Jerry's saying, well, if he just leaves, I don't have to do that. And then I'll promote Brian Schottenheimer or whatever, or whoever is sitting on that.
Yeah, I think the easier path, the path of less resistance for Jerry Jones, is to renegotiate the deal and then just have Steven do it. So Jerry, tell Steven, hey, here's the number. We do not go above this number under any circumstances. Wink, wink. In reality, it's $2 or $3 million above that number. And you send Steven Jones off to go and negotiate the deal, and you can go and count your money at your oil rig and call it a day.
Meanwhile, Steven just drives around the block a couple times, comes back. He said, oh, he wouldn't play for that because Steven doesn't want him. Steven wants, you're going to give me some power here? Okay, I'm going to go hire my own coach. So he goes out and he gets the phone out and has a fake conversation. One side, McCarthy said no. He said 20 billion, Daddy. What are we going to do? And we're going to get somebody else. That's how that's going to go. But I don't think any of us are looking at it and saying it's going to be handled professionally like a normal organization does. Now, I don't want to call the Jaguars super normal and professional because Trent Baalke's involved, but they fired Doug, and then here's our list of guys that we're talking to, and it's Todd Monken, and it's and Kellen Moore, and all these top line coordinators, and it's this is how a normal organization handles its succession. We're not going to get that from the Jets. We're not going to get from the Cowboys.
I'm just amazed, by the way, just as a quick aside, that the Jaguars didn't completely clean house, because that situation came off the rails. It had been off the rails, but it fell into the sea this season. With Trent Baalke, I just don't understand how you can look at his track record and say, that's the guy that I want to have hire yet another head coach, and I'm going to continue to give him personnel control, let him handle the draft, make free agent decisions. The fact that it was not a clean sweep in Jacksonville, I actually feel sorry and a little bit sad for Jaguars fans, if they exist, that franchise needs to continue under the stewardship of Trent Baalke.
There are people who are good at doing the job, and then there are people who are good at keeping the job. Those are two different skills. Baalke excels at keeping the job. He makes sure that the message that gets to the hires up is the message he wants to deliver to them, and that's how he preserves his job.
Or the message that ownership likes to hear. I mentioned earlier in the season, I had a coach tell me that someone was lying to Shad Khan about that being the best roster that's been built in Jacksonville. Someone was lying to the owner.
Yes.
I have a feeling that someone might have been Trent Baalke.
Yes, the man in the hot dog suit has been identified.
So let's switch gears here. Let's turn to the page to the games that remain,
Oh,
the
yes.
teams that are vying for the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
Oh,
Wild
yeah.
card weekend about to get underway.
Yeah, that's right. There are playoffs. I forgot.
How
It's
could you forget? You had not one but a two-part preview of these NFL playoffs.
my head exploded after I wrote it. I wrote it. It took it's like a total of like 12,000 words,
I noticed.
like 7 glasses of bourbon, and I passed out. And now it's gone. I don't even remember what I wrote. But it is funny. I'm joking a little bit, but like the first 2 days or 3 days of the playoff season are so coaching carousel focused
Yes.
because you have these like 17 teams that are looking for coaches or are worried about their quarterback's contract or things like that. I almost click off for like a couple of days, and you've got your Penn State jersey on, and then after the Penn State game on Friday, we're going. There you go.
There we go. We are.
They are, and they're ready for the semifinals. Like on Friday, it's going to be like, holy crap, we've got 6 playoff
We
games
got
to
playoff
play.
games to watch. Yes.
Right, right.
And we got some good ones. I'm excited for a lot of these games. And, I think there's one team, maybe only one road team that can actually get it done this weekend. And it's the Chargers,
Oh,
because I'm just not buying in on what the Texans are. I think there are too many injuries. I think that it's caused too much of a regression in CJ Stroud. And I look at what Jim Harbaugh built this year. We talked about it early in the year about the building of the culture and the forging of an identity. Their identity is, we're going to get downhill. We're going to get downhill in a hurry. And when you start to creep up near the line to respect J.K. Dobbins, we're just going to let Justin Herbert sling it down the field to Ladd McConkey. And we're going to rein in Herbert a little bit. He's not going to throw the ball 35 times a game. But boy, oh boy, is he going to be effective on those 20 passes, because we play decent defense. We run the ball down your throats. And it just doesn't feel like the Texans are built to stop that.
no, and that's just it. Imagine if the Texans were doing the similar thing with CJ Stroud and say, we're going to hammer, 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 and then go play action. Instead, they're out there and say, let's see how many times we can sack Stroud. And yeah, that's a good matchup for the Texans. That's going to be rock fight like situation there. I like the Chargers in that one. I thought you were going to be all in on the Commanders.
I am in on the Commanders, but I worry about the rookie quarterback factor going in
Okay.
to Tampa Bay. Just look at the way that they seem to overcome adversity every week. They decided that they were just going to mess around a little bit on Sunday with the Saints, and yeah, just kind of like go through the motions. And for about 48 minutes of game time, I was like, oh my God, they're going to F around and F up their season here
Yep.
against the New Orleans Saints.
Yep.
And you look up and Baker Mayfield leads 2 touchdown drives. They decide on the last series of the game they were going to get Mike Evans that 1,000 yards. Look, I think the Commanders are the team that nobody wants to play. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm not ruling them out. I just love what Justin Herbert has done within the constraints of that offense. And I worry about Baker Mayfield just deciding to just shift into fifth gear in the biggest moments of the biggest games, that might be the end of the Commander season.
I like what the Bucks do on the offensive line. They're going to be blitzing all different things against Daniels and seeing how he reacts to it. And he's reacted pretty well to it during the season, but there are times you still see the rookie stuff come out of him. The Eagles got some of it out of them, but then Jalen Hurts got hurt. Even in the first half of the Cowboys Commanders game, the Cowboys were frustrating Daniels, and then they just said enough's enough. They took him out of there. Watch the injury report. It's Tuesday right now when we record. I'm not looking at the injury report yet. Buccaneers have injuries at tight end, at cornerback. These are two big positions for them. Without Cade Otton, that's a problem for them because Otton's a big part of their underneath game. He kind of took up some of the slack for Godwin. And without Winfield and Dean, I believe it is, who are out last week, that's a different Buccaneers team. That's a very vulnerable Buccaneers team. If those guys are mostly healthy, I think they're going to be able to take care of business against the Commanders.
The other thing is that, what they do seems to match up really well against what Washington is, and that's running the football. At the bottom of the column on Monday, I put together the one key for every single team to win this weekend. And for the Buccaneers, it was relentlessly run the football, whether it's Bucky Irving, whether it's Sean Tucker, whoever the running back is, whether it's all three of them. Over the last 3 weeks, Mike, Tampa averaged 171.6 rushing yards per game. You do something like that against Washington, you're going to limit Jaden Daniels' ability to make those big plays. You're going to keep keep the ball out of their hands. You're going to shorten the game. And I'm not sure what the temperature is going to be. It's a night game, so it probably won't matter that much. But if there's any sort of humidity at all, you're now dictating to the Commander defense with a physical power, explosive running game. To me, that's how Tampa wins. And that's what kind of gives them the edge, in my opinion.
See, the guy, I know he's had a couple interviews. He's had one or two, but I'm surprised he's not the top of the list, is Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. Revitalized that running game and really has this short game, this quick game. It's very McVay-like. He is a McVay guy in terms of guys going in motion, catching the quick pass, guys going in motion, catching the quick pass. Saints were onto it a little bit last week, but of course he was running out of dudes. He didn't have Otten. He hasn't have Godwin for weeks. That's some of the things the Buccaneers do in addition to their running game. I don't feel 100% comfortable because of their injuries, but I have a feeling the Commanders will be one and done in the playoffs.
I know we typically do a circle game at the very end. It's a little bit different in the playoffs. There's only so many games, but is there a game this weekend that you have your eye on that's going to be the best of the bunch?
Well, we're all in the Eagles-Packers mindset here. And that's one of the closer games and one of the more compelling matchups. I think I put this out there. We're both kind of Steelers skeptics. I think everyone's a Steelers skeptic. I think the Steelers are Steelers skeptics.
Yes.
I'm not going to look right now. When I filled it out this morning, plus 10?
Yeah.
Plus 10? Plus
I think
10 in a Ravens Steelers game? Plus 10?
I think everybody watched what happened in Baltimore on Christmas weekend when Lamar Jackson just went off and Derrick Henry ran wild and Russell Wilson. That was the game when Russell Wilson realized that he's 57-year-old Russell Wilson and he hasn't recovered from that realization ever since. You know, that to me, that line, it almost seems small to me. I don't buy into the Steelers whatsoever at this point. And I just look at, you know, Arthur Smith's offense has hit a wall. When they aren't able to run the ball effectively to set everything else up, it doesn't work. Defensively, it seems like they're starting to show some signs of wear and tear from carrying that team. And look, they have not been the same since that loss in Philadelphia. They've lost 4 straight, and these are physical games that they've lost. It was a rock fight in Philadelphia, if you remember, defensive slugfest for 55 out of the 60 minutes. You had to go on a short week, turn it around on after Philly, you had to go to Baltimore, right? You went to the Ravens and you got walloped in a game where you had the opportunity to take control of the AFC North and win that division and control your own destiny, and just didn't even bother to show up. Then you had to play on 4 days later on Kansas City on Christmas, and you just got your doors blown off in your building in front of your fans. And then on this past weekend, Cincinnati comes in. Sure, their Cinderella story ends, but you let them off the hook. You couldn't even end their season without having to pay a lick of attention. Cincinnati on Sunday at home, they came up small again. That situation is broken. The quarterback has revealed himself to be mediocre at best, what we saw out of him in Denver last year. And I wouldn't be shocked, Mike, if this is a 2-touchdown statement win by Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and that defense on Sunday afternoon.
I would be shocked because I think that game that they played a couple weeks ago is the first time we've ever seen a statement win. These guys tend to drag themselves down into the muck against each other. And the Ravens, for all their talent, are very draggable because of their penalty history and things like that. So I'm going to look it up. I don't have it. I can't remember a double-digit spread in that game. I'm avoiding it, or I might just take the Steelers to backdoor cover. But I was going to ask you, but I think I know the answer. Okay, lack of faith. Do you have more faith in the Steelers, or do you have more faith in the Vikings after what we saw?
Slightly more faith in the Vikings, but I think they lose too.
Really?
I really think that Aaron Glenn authored the blueprint on how to beat Sam Darnold. Just, you know, that 1 for 7 down along the goal line in the first half, that destroyed the Vikings' chances of winning that game. And I think that it showed how you beat them deep in that territory. And I think that Sam Darnold, I think the glass cleat shattered. I think the Cinderella story for Sam Darnold, he's reverted back to being Sam Darnold again, in my opinion.
It's interesting because Aaron Schatz was telling me DVOA is leaning towards the Rams against the Vikings.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of bodies buried in the Vikings run over the last month or two. If you look at some of the games that they kind of Houdini'd out of, Vikings fans get very upset when you bring up one score games and everything, but like it's true. There's some of these games, well, we didn't play well, and then there was a pass interference penalty against the guy covering Jefferson, and that's where we got the score, etc.
Penalties still happen. They still count. They still matter.
They still matter, exactly. But like then when you're trying to prognosticate forward, then you have to be wary of like, well, how often is that going to happen? I'll tell you what, if Glenn figured this out and said, this is how we can apply pressure on Sam Darnold and cover those guys with the guys Glenn has left. When you go into the Rams and they can bring the young Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Kobe Bryant and all these, like, you remember their name for next year guys coming right up the throat at you. Yeah, the corners aren't great, but if you can get pressure with those guys, it is going to be a very interesting Monday night game.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're the Vikings, just don't blitz Matthew Stafford. Whatever you do not blitz him because I spoke to
You're Flores. What do you mean not blitz?
Well, I talked to Aaron Schatz, and the fourth best quarterback in the league, DVOA against the blitz, is Matthew Stafford. I looked it up on PFF, and he has a 66.5 completion percentage this season against the blitz for 1,424 yards and 8 touchdowns when you blitz him. So that's the other reason why. You asked me whether I have confidence in the Vikings or the Steelers. I don't have a lot of confidence in either because the way that the Vikings win feels like it's the way that you get blown up by Matthew Stafford and the Rams.
Right. 4 touchdowns by Stafford, I believe, in the Vikings, in the victory over the Vikings in week 9. And like the Flores blitzes, which are all over the place, they're amazing, remarkable. They gave Goff a headache really for the first half. There's 2 things you can do. One is be the old veteran quarterback who's seen everything and be like, I don't give a damn, you Brady it, which I think Stafford can do, although, he's not that level. And the other thing you can do against it is what the Eagles would do, which is, okay, you want to blitz a million times. Here comes Saquon down your throat. Let's see if we can just run delays on you and get through that. And that's a little bit of what the Lions did, I think, in the second half of that game, where they started to take control more physically. I still like the Vikings next week. After that, all bets are off.
4 words: Puka Nacua, hot route. That's how you win. That's how you win if you're the Rams. And Puka Nacua, he's only appeared in 10 games this season. Mm-hmm. I think that he's almost as important to the Rams' trajectory as Matthew Stafford. The Rams are 3-1 in games where Puka Nacua has 100 yards.
Oh, wow. And I've seen, including the Bills game.
Yes.
Where when in doubt, they were just throwing screens to Puka. When in doubt, let's see if you can tackle. McVay makes sure all of his receivers can block all the other guys who are out there, like Robinson and even little Tutu. They're out there blocking. Let's see if you can stop this. And they'll get 60, 70 yards on screens from Puka. That's another thing. You're right. Hot routes, things like that can slow Brian Flores' defense down and force Sam Darnold to win a game for you.
And we brought it up. You brought it up. Eagles and Packers, and that might have game of the weekend potential. And I kind of look, Christian Watson going out is a bad scene for the Packers, and I think it's a pretty big loss for what Green Bay does offensively. It all comes down to Jordan Love's health, if he's healthy. Mm-hmm. But I'm inclined to lean Green Bay a little bit here, just based on what we saw out of their defense over the past month. And if Jalen Hurts isn't 100% fully healthy, I think he'll get cleared from the concussion protocol. As of recording this on Tuesday, as of Monday afternoon, he was still in the protocol. Mm-hmm. If Jalen Hurts isn't 100% sharp, all it takes is 1 or 2 mistakes against that team, and you could look up, and now you're in some trouble.
One thing you've been talking about, Aaron, DVOA, Packers blew it away in the second half of the season in DVOA. They were playing outstanding football. I just don't see it that way. Jalen Hurts coming back, the way the Eagles were playing up until the moment he got hurt against the Commanders, I think they take this depleted team. I'm not worried about Jordan Love. I think he's fine. They're completely downplaying his elbow injury. But you're a team without Christian Watson. You're also without Alexander at cornerback. They've stopped pretending that he's a week away. Was a week away for the last 2 months. He's out of there. I think I'm never confident of an Eagles victory over the Giants, et cetera. I think this feels about as confident an Eagles victory as you can have in a playoff situation, honestly.
Mark of the tape. We'll see if we have to play it back for you on Sunday night. A couple quick trends for you in that game.
Yes.
Eagles 6-1 when AJ Brown either scores a touchdown or surpasses 100 yards.
Nice.
So whoever's the quarterback, I think they're going to funnel it through AJ Brown as they should, and then you let the human erasure of adversity, Saquon Barkley, just grind him into submission. And if you're the Eagles, you got to play man coverage against them. The Acme Packer Company does a great job covering Green Bay. Interesting stat that the Vikings game 2 weeks ago, Jordan Love averaged just 3.1 yards per attempt and only completed four passes on the 13 snaps in man coverage. So if you're Vic Fangio, don't drop into that zone. Play man up and force Jordan Love to make some decisions against that coverage.
And Watson's absence makes man coverage more plausible because most teams can't match up across, and Watson's one reason for that. But if you're matching up more along the lines of, well, now it's Reed and Dobbs and the tight ends, and I'm not as worried about it, then you can go out there with Quinion and Darius Slay and Dijon and CJ DJ, et cetera, and say, oh, we can find the matchups we need, and we can do that when we choose to.
Yep. Now, I kind of needled you a little bit about maybe playing the tape if the Eagles don't get this done. You know me, I was all in on Joe Burrow. I thought they'd get it done. I thought Joe Burrow.
Matt,
the floor is yours.
The Bengals fans are having we would have made the playoffs, but the Chiefs didn't want us parade. They're having it tomorrow. They want you to be the Grand Marshal.
I'll lead the damn thing.
Okay,
give me the baton and I'll lead the parade.
You need orange
fun marching.
You need orange Zubu pants from the 80s with the stripes on them.
Yes.
You might have to ask an aunt or somebody because you weren't of the era to have them. I might have a pair lying around. And yes, you can get the baton and you can go out there and they'll be burning Carson Wentz in effigy. I think I have a burnt Carson Wentz around here somewhere that they can borrow. But you were right. You were right in that that team was really, really good. Is going to make a run. They made a run. Burrow did the things he had to do that now we're talking, yeah, he really should be second or third in the MVP ballot, et cetera. Chase those guys, Hendrickson, certainly. But the tiebreakers were the tiebreakers. And that's the thing. You were advocating for a team that had no control over its own destiny.
Yeah, and it came down to Andy Reid just deciding not to play anyone but the practice squad. And those practice squad players played about as well as you could expect them to play after being stranded on the tarmac for 3 hours at Kansas City's airport on Saturday afternoon. I mean, listen, you put yourself behind the 8 ball when you're struggling as mightily as they did early in the season. They need to figure out how to start faster. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I do think I'm right that if they would have made the postseason, I do think at minimum, Joe Burrow would have received votes for MVP. But that entire conversation, it's moot. This is Lamar Jackson's award to win. And the Bengals need to figure out how to play in September.
Man, I wish I took Lamar at about plus 650 a couple of weeks ago because Aaron was telling me, it's like, look at the DER, look at everything else like that and all. And I'm like, oh, you're just being contrary. You'd be sitting pretty right now with the Lamar vote. But like, yeah, every week along the way, if you look at the Bengals and said the Bengals are going to win this week, and whether you made a wager or you said it at around the water cooler, you get the win. But yeah, they started out too cold, like you said. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the rhetoric among Bengals fans. It's poisonous. Like they're acting like they just.
They want to petition Roger Goodell about Andy Reid throwing the game.
Right. Right.
On social media, basically say that they violated the rules.
Yes.
Playing their backups. It's almost as toxic as the Broncos fans who were coming at me for merely suggesting that Andy Reid might remember Sean Payton basically hanging a 40 burger on the Chiefs backups and having Bo Nix throw the ball in the fourth quarter up 38-0, even suggesting that Andy Reid might turn that around on them if they meet in the playoffs or next season. Right. The vitriol coming from Bengals fans was almost as bad as what I needed to do with the block button on Sunday night.
It's like years back, the Saints fans in that playoff game against the Rams, where those, you're the first guys who ever had a penalty go against you. Oh, and by the way, it was like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you had the lead, so I don't want to hear it. Bengals fans, get a time machine, go back, tell your team to win in week 1, and then we'll talk about injustice. But all 17 of the games count, including the ones that you say, well, that was a long time ago. It's like Your quarterback was healthy. Everyone was healthy. Go beat the stupid Patriots with Jacoby Brissett in week 1, and then we could be talking about how you're the team no one wants to beat in the playoffs. Otherwise, hush, quiet. Watch the games. Do mock drafts. Hope your owner finds some freaking change in his couch to go pay your receivers.
And then, by the way, I'm all in on Joe Burrow, have been for a long time. Restructure your deal to free up enough money to sign T. Higgins, please. We've seen Brady do it. We've seen Patrick Mahomes do it. If you care about T. Higgins that much and he's as valuable to the Bengals as he is, facilitate him coming back.
The problem with playing with the Bengals is you could restructure the contract and they still don't pay the guys. That's the problem.
Very true. Mike, what do you got coming up on the Two Deep Zone?
Well, I'm covering the coaching carousel, etc. Here's something I'm working on a week or two down the road. Been talking to the Hall of Fame voters off the record about this year's finalists. We talked a lot of Giants earlier, a guy named Eli. We've been talking to a couple of them. I have several of them. I've been transcribing tape, getting some tea about how this Hall of Fame vote's going to go. Very interesting year. Could be a very controversial year. That's not coming up today, tomorrow, the next day, but it's coming soon at the Two Deep Zone. What do you got?
Cannot wait to read it. This is going to be underwhelming by comparison. We have the mailbag coming out on Friday.
Mailbags are cool. Mailbags are cool. I'm doing a mailbag next week.
They are cool. And I love my concept where I take the questions and I go through the Rolodex, figure out who's going to give me the best answer to the person's question, ask them, ask the league source, get the league source's insight in there in addition to mine. So that comes out on Friday. A couple of playoff previews. We'll dive into a couple more of the unsung heroes for some of these teams and some coaching carousel columns where they're merited.
Right. And you've got the all breakout team right now. There's a little bit by me in there. And you can comment us and tell us the 85 people we snubbed, which remember, you only picked like one little roster and then we added a few guys.
Yes.
You don't have room for everybody.
Right. The ground rules were, and Mike decided he was going to be the exception. 5 players. One of them is a quarterback. Mike gave us 6, which is fine. They needed to get the extra one in there. And it was a great pick. Go and read it at Between the Hash Marks. It's the all breakout team from this year. It was a lot of fun to put together. Joe Stazak, Mike Tanier, myself, we all made our picks. You can debate us. Fire off in the comments section who we forgot and who you should add. And, we should have a vote. Which group was the best group of breakout players?
There you go. So we could all go up against each other and have a little argument behind the scenes. Perfect.
He's Mike Tanier. Follow him on Blue Sky at Mike Tanier. I'm at Matt Lombardo. Follow me at Matt Lombardo on Blue Sky. And Mike, should be a great weekend of playoff football. Can't wait to next week.
We are.
Penn State.
I'm not.